The champagne tasted wrong. I should have known right then. Should have trusted my instincts as Vanessa handed me that glass with her perfect smile. But I was too busy thinking about the ring in my pocket, about how I'd propose under the Caribbean stars. The poison hit my system fast. My vision blurred. My legs buckled. Her hand pressed against my back, gentle at first, then shoving hard. The yacht railing caught my waist, and then I was falling. Cold ocean water swallowed me whole. As I sank into the darkness, lungs burning with salt water, I heard her laughter mixing with the waves above. My last thought before everything went black was simple. She'd won. Vanessa had played me perfectly, and now she'd take everything, my company, my fortune, my life. But here's what she didn't know. I didn't die that night. And 6 months later, I'd walked back into her world as someone she'd never expect. The woman who saved my life? She'd become the most powerful CEO in the country. And Vanessa? Well, let me tell you how a girl who found me dying behind a diner ended up owning everything my murderous ex-fiancé tried to steal. This is a story of how I came back from the dead. The darkness surrounded me completely as I sank deeper. Every breath was agony, salt water flooding my lungs, burning like fire. Vanessa's laughter still echoed somewhere above, a sound that would haunt me for months. I kept sinking, my body heavy and unresponsive in the current. Everything I'd built flashed through my dying mind. Apex Industries, the company I'd grown from nothing into a billion-dollar empire. The deals I'd closed, the risks I'd taken, the late nights that had paid off beyond my wildest dreams. All of it ending here, 20 feet below the surface of the Caribbean Sea. I thought about my parents, both gone now, and how disappointed they'd be that I'd trusted the wrong person. I'd given Vanessa access to everything, my accounts, my secrets, my heart. She'd studied me like a textbook, learned exactly how to manipulate me, and I'd been so blind, so stupidly in love that I'd missed every red flag. My consciousness faded to pinpricks of light against the black water. My heart slowed to an irregular, failing rhythm. I stopped fighting the ocean and let it take me. Adrian Monroe was dying in these waters, betrayed by the woman he'd loved. At least, that's what I thought was happening. I woke up choking on sand and seawater, my body convulsing on a beach somewhere. Every muscle screamed with pain. My lungs felt like they'd been set on fire. I rolled onto my side and vomited salt water onto the hot sand. Where was I? The question echoed in my empty mind, but no answer came. I tried to remember my name. Nothing. My age, my life, my past, all gone, wiped clean like someone had erased a hard drive. Only one image remained burned into my fractured memory. A beautiful woman's face twisted with cruelty as she pushed me. That moment played on repeat, but I couldn't place it in any context. I didn't know who she was or why she'd done it. I didn't know who I was or how I'd ended up on this beach. The sun beat down mercilessly on my exposed skin. When I tried to stand, my legs collapsed like wet paper. I crawled toward some rocks for shade, each movement agony. Hours blurred together in waves of pain and confusion. A fishing boat moved along the distant horizon, but I couldn't call out. My voice was destroyed, barely a whisper. By nightfall, I'd found shelter in a small cave between the rocks. I had no identification, no money, no memory, just pain and a single image of betrayal that I couldn't understand. I didn't know it then, but I'd just been given a chance to become someone better than who I'd been. Lila found me 2 days later behind her family's diner. I was covered in dried filth, my clothes torn and stiff with dried seawater and blood. I must have looked like death itself. She could have walked past me without a second glance. Most people would have. But she stopped. She was young, maybe 23, with dark eyes that held more kindness than I'd seen in years. She didn't bombard me with questions or call the police. She just helped me inside quietly, cleaned my wound with gentle hands, and gave me water to sip slowly. When I collapsed from exhaustion, she let me sleep in the back room on a clean mattress. I woke hours later to find fresh clothes folded beside me and warm food waiting. "You need a name," she said simply when I opened my eyes. "I'm gonna call you Noah. It means new beginning." Noah. The name settled over me like a comfortable coat. A man washed up on shore, starting completely over with nothing. I nodded, accepting it, accepting her kindness. I didn't know it then, but this girl would save my life in ways that went far beyond pulling me from the streets. She'd give me a reason to be better than whoever I'd been before I lost my memory. Lila's stepmother made her disgust crystal clear the moment she saw me. "Why would you bring this trash into our home?" she spat, her face twisted with contempt. He probably crawled out of a gutter. He could be dangerous. Lila didn't argue back or defend her decision. She simply turned to me and offered a job, washing dishes, fixing broken furniture, cleaning floors, whatever needed doing, all in exchange for food and a place to stay. I accepted immediately because I had nothing else, no other options. The work gave me purpose when everything else felt empty and confusing. The stepmother complained constantly, making cutting remarks whenever she saw me. But Lila's father, Marcus, was different. He had the kind of generous heart that made you believe in humanity again. He told his wife firmly to leave me alone, that everyone deserved help when they were down. I worked harder than anyone in that diner. I scrubbed floors until they gleamed, fixed wobbly tables and chairs until they stood solid, washed dishes until my hands were raw and bleeding. I needed to prove I deserved to be there, that I wasn't just taking their charity. Over the weeks, something changed. My body healed from whatever trauma had put me on that beach. The constant nightmares became less frequent. I started to feel human again. Marcus treated me like family, and Lila treated me like I mattered. For the first time since waking up, I felt hope. In the city, Vanessa was playing the grieving fiancée with Oscar-worthy skill. I saw it on the diner's small television one afternoon. Missing billionaire CEO presumed dead. She stood before reporters wearing an expensive black dress, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. My blood boiled watching her, though I didn't understand why at first. Something about her face triggered deep rage that I couldn't explain. She was already moving to take everything, the news revealed, forging marriage certificates, claiming to be my widow, demanding access to my accounts and company. But someone was standing in her way. Daniel, my loyal personal assistant, though I didn't remember him, saw through her lies immediately. He told reporters that even if I was dead, she'd get nothing. She was just a fiancée with no legal rights to my fortune or business. That's when things got interesting. Daniel refused her every demand, fought her in court, protected my empire even though he had no idea I was alive. Watching him defend my legacy on that small screen stirred something in my broken memory, like a door trying to crack open. Who was I that someone would fight this hard to protect what was mine? The question haunted me, but the answer stayed locked away behind walls of amnesia. The company announced a $10 million reward for my body, dead or alive. The news exploded across every channel. Vanessa's mask slipped during the press conference. I watched her face go pale when they announced the amount, saw panic flash in her eyes before she recovered her grieving expression. She couldn't risk me being found alive. That would destroy everything she planned. Daniel held firm against her demands, refusing to declare me legally dead without proof. The reward made me nervous too, though I couldn't fully explain why. Some deep instinct warned me I wasn't ready to be found, wasn't ready to return to whoever I'd been before. And honestly, I was starting to feel something unexpected in this small diner with these people who'd taken me in. Peace. Real peace that felt precious and fragile. I wanted to hold on to this quiet life a little longer, away from whatever chaos my old existence had contained. But I knew it wouldn't last. The past always catches up eventually, no matter how far you run, or how well you hide. I could feel it approaching like a storm building on the horizon, dark and inevitable. The question wasn't if my old life would find me. It was when, and whether I'd be ready when it did. Lila sat with me through the nightmares that tore me from sleep. I'd wake up screaming, reliving fragments of something terrible. Champagne, cold water, darkness crushing my chest, a woman's laughter. She'd hold my hand without saying much, just being there in the dark until my breathing steadied and the terror faded. She never pushed me to remember or asked invasive questions. She just offered quiet companionship. Over weeks, the nightmares became less frequent and less intense. The terror loosened its grip. Lila saw past my confusion and pain to something deeper, strength she claimed to see before I could see it myself. One evening, after a particularly brutal nightmare left me shaking, she looked at me differently. "You're good," she said with quiet certainty. "I can tell from your heart, from how you treat people, how hard you work, how much you care." Something shifted inside me at her words. Not quite love yet, but close, a connection that felt real and solid. She was giving me a reason to survive, to fight for something better. She was saving me one gentle moment at a time, pulling me back toward humanity when I felt lost. I didn't have words to thank her, didn't know how to express what her kindness meant. So I just squeezed her hand and hoped she understood. I proposed to her quietly one evening without a ring, just before her father's health started declining. The words came out simple and honest. "Will you marry me?" She said yes without hesitation, her smile brighter than anything I could remember. We married at the courthouse with only Marcus as our witness. For the first time since waking on that beach, I felt real peace settle deep in my chest. Then the news flashed across the diner's television during our small celebration. Missing billionaire CO, presumed dead, $10 million reward continues. My face filled the screen, my actual face, alongside footage of Vanessa crying for cameras. My heart stopped. The room spun. But I still wasn't ready to tell Lila the truth. Something held me back, some protective instinct that warned me knowledge could be dangerous. I needed more time to remember everything, to understand what had happened and why. She didn't need to know my real identity yet, didn't need that burden. I was protecting her, or at least that's what I told myself as I kept the biggest secret of my life hidden from the woman I just married. The lie felt heavy between us even though she couldn't see it. Guilt gnawed at me, but fear kept my mouth shut. What if the truth put her in danger? The blow came during a heated argument about money. Lila's stepmother had been screaming at her, calling her worthless and stupid for marrying a nobody with no future. I snapped, defending my wife with words that made the stepmother's face turn red with rage. She grabbed a heavy metal serving tray from the counter and swung it at my head with all her strength. The impact sent me crashing to the floor, stars exploding across my vision. But something else happened simultaneously, something that changed everything. The blow cracked something open in my mind, like shattering a dam. Memories flooded through in a devastating wave that left me gasping for air. My name, Adrian Monroe. My company, Apex Industries, worth $3 billion. Vanessa's face crystal clear now. My fiancée, my attempted murderer. The yacht, the poison in the champagne. Her hand on my back, pushing, the ocean swallowing me as she laughed. Everything came back in one overwhelming rush. The pain of remembering hit harder than the physical blow. I lay on that diner floor, suddenly knowing exactly who I was and everything that had been stolen from me. The amnesia was completely gone. I was Adrian Monroe again, and I knew precisely what needed to happen next. Vanessa thought she'd killed me. She thought she'd won. But she just made the biggest mistake of her life. I called Daniel the next day using a burner phone, my hands shaking as I dialed. "It's me," I said when he answered. Silence. Then his voice came through, trembling. "Adrian? Is it really you?" I told him everything. How I'd survived, where I'd been, how I'd just got my memory back. He told me the rest of the story I'd missed. Vanessa and he had been enemies at first, fighting over control of my company. But then something changed. She'd seduced him, manipulated him into joining her schemes. Now, they were working together to steal my entire empire. Daniel's voice broke with guilt. I was weak. The power, the money, it got to me. "I'm sorry, Adrian. I'm so sorry." I listened without responding to his apology. Trust had to be earned through actions, not words. He betrayed me, but at least he was honest about it now. He told me their plans. They were moving to declare me legally dead within days. They'd already started selling off pieces of my company to overseas buyers. They thought they'd won. I let him finish, taking mental notes of every detail. Then I told him what he needed to do if he really wanted my forgiveness. He agreed immediately, desperate for redemption. Good. I'd need someone on the inside for what came next. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. And I was going to take back everything they'd stolen. I had to be strategic about my resurrection. Bursting back into the world as Adrian Monroe would give Vanessa time to run, to hide assets, to cover her tracks. I needed to be smarter than that. I started moving money quietly through shell companies I'd set up years ago for legitimate tax purposes. Lila's father needed emergency heart surgery, $1 million that the family didn't have. I arranged everything through intermediaries, making sure no traces led back to me. Lila thought I'd received an inheritance from a distant relative I'd suddenly remembered. She accepted the explanation without question, too worried about Marcus to dig deeper. The surgery was successful. Marcus recovered fully. And while that was happening, I began my real resurrection in secret. I reached out through encrypted channels to old allies, CEOs I'd worked with, investors who trusted me, business partners who remember my integrity. I was rebuilding my empire from the shadows while living as Noah in a diner, washing dishes and fixing chairs. Every move was calculated. Every contact was deliberate. Vanessa thought she was consolidating power. She had no idea I was building an army in the dark, piece by careful piece. Patience was my weapon now. Precision was my strategy. And when I finally struck, it would be devastating. My old allies confirmed what Daniel had told me. Vanessa and my former assistant were planning to declare me officially dead within 72 hours. They wanted to seize my international deals and shares before anyone could challenge their authority. But I had a secret weapon they didn't know about. Years ago, I'd set up overseas holding companies that owned 70% of Apex Industries. Most people didn't know these holdings existed. I kept them quiet for tax purposes and security. Now I use them strategically, reaching out to the international executives who manage them. Within 48 hours, I had a coalition of power supporting my return. CEOs in Singapore, London, Dubai, and Hong Kong. All of them remember me, remember my business acumen and integrity. They agreed to follow my lead, to wait for my signal. I recruited people back to my side with promises of restored positions and generous bonuses. My empire was rebuilding itself in the shadows while Vanessa celebrated her stolen victory. Daniel fed me inside information about board meetings and financial moves. Every piece of intelligence was another weapon in my arsenal. Vanessa couldn't see the storm gathering against her. She thought she'd won, thought I was dead and gone. But the game had barely started, and I was playing for keeps. Vanessa and Daniel staged their board vote, pushing through paperwork to declare me legally dead despite the ongoing investigation. They celebrated afterwards at the city's most expensive restaurant, toasting with champagne and laughing at how easy it had been. I watched the live stream from my phone in the diner kitchen, my jaw clenched with controlled rage. They were sloppy now, arrogant and careless. Daniel had started selling my company's assets to overseas CEOs, negotiating deals he thought would make him powerful and rich. What he didn't know, those CEOs answered to me. Every sale he made actually strengthened my position. Vanessa had moved into my penthouse, was wearing my late mother's jewelry in public. The sight of her draped in my mother's pearls made rage burn hot in my chest. But I stayed calm, patient. I was playing a much longer game than they could comprehend. I documented everything. Every illegal transaction, every forged document, every lie they told. I was building an ironclad case that would send them both to prison for decades. When I finally struck, it wouldn't just be revenge. It would be justice, cold and precise, and completely legal. They'd stolen my life. I was going to take everything from them in return. I called an emergency board meeting, arranging for my face to appear on the main conference room screen. I wasn't ready to show up in person yet. I wanted to gauge their reactions first, watch them panic from a safe distance. When my face flickered onto that screen, the reaction was perfect. Vanessa screamed, an actual, piercing scream that echoed through the boardroom. Daniel went completely pale, all blood draining from his face. The other board members erupted into confused chaos. I let the silence hang heavy for several long seconds, watching their panic grow. Then I spoke, my voice steady and calm. "Did you miss me?" Vanessa started denying everything immediately. "This is a trick. He's a body double. Daniel, tell them this isn't real. But I knew her tells, knew exactly how to prove I was real. I mentioned the yacht, the emerald dress she'd worn that night, the exact brand of champagne she'd poisoned. I described the moment she'd pushed me overboard, her laughter mixing with the sound of waves. Her face crumbled as I spoke, realization hitting that I was alive and she was caught. The boardroom erupted. Everyone shouted at once. Security rushed in, confused. I'd arranged for police to be waiting outside. They arrested Vanessa and Daniel right there, led them out in handcuffs while news cameras captured everything. My vindication was beginning. You said those exact words the night you tried to kill me. I said quietly, cutting through the chaos. The room fell silent. Every board member stared at Vanessa. Her mouth opened and closed without sound. Daniel tried to recover. He's clearly confused from trauma. I remember everything. I interrupted. The poison, the fall, everything you did. It was over. Everyone in that room knew the truth now. She'd attempted murder. I was alive, and their stolen empire was about to collapse. Daniel tried to leave, but security stopped him on my orders. Police arrested them both, reading rights while cameras flashed from every angle. The news exploded within hours. Missing billionaire returned from dead, accuses fiancée of murder. Headlines screamed across every outlet. Social media erupted with theories and reactions. Some people thought it was a hoax. Others demanded immediate justice. I watched it all unfold from the diner while Lila slept upstairs, still unaware her husband was at the center of the biggest story in the country. But she'd know soon. Everyone would know soon. The stepmother would realize the nobody she'd mocked was worth billions. Marcus would understand why I'd been able to pay for his surgery. And Lila? She'd learned that the man she'd saved from the streets was about to give her the world. I froze every asset they'd stolen within hours. Their empire collapsed like a house of cards. Business deals fell through. Investors panicked and pulled out. Banks froze accounts pending investigation. I used legal precision, not violence, to dismantle everything they'd built on my stolen foundation. Vanessa called from jail, her voice desperate. Adrian, please. I made a mistake. I still love you. Please. I hung up without a word. She'd had her chance to love me honestly. She'd chosen poison instead. Daniel confessed everything to prosecutors, hoping for a reduced sentence. He was weak, had always been weak. I let the law handle them while I moved forward with my real plan. Their crimes would follow them forever. Attempted murder, fraud, theft, conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, financial records, witness testimony. They were going to prison for a long time. Meanwhile, I began restructuring my company, installing loyal people in key positions. But that wasn't my main focus. My main focus was on the woman who'd saved my life, who'd given me shelter and love when I had nothing. It was time to give her everything she deserved and more. It was time to make Lila one of the most powerful women in the country. Under Lila's name, I launched L Industries, a technology company designed to be everything Apex should have been. I poured resources into it, recruited the best talent in the industry, and positioned it for explosive growth. The business world noticed immediately. Within weeks, venture capitalists were fighting for the chance to invest. Tech blogs called it the most exciting startup of the decade. Financial analysts predicted it would surpass every major competitor within a year. Within 3 months, L Industries was worth more than Apex had ever been. I made sure Lila's name was on every document, every achievement, every success. She'd saved my life when I was nothing. Now I was going to make sure the world knew her worth. Technology conferences invited her to speak. Business magazines wanted interviews. Investors courted her aggressively. And through it all, she worked at the diner, completely unaware she'd become one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. I kept the secret because the timing wasn't right yet for full revelation. But soon, very soon, everyone would know. The girl who'd found a dying stranger behind her diner would be revealed as a billionaire CEO. And Vanessa would watch it all from prison, realizing she'd tried to steal from the wrong man. I walked into the New York charity gala, with Lila on my arm. Done with hiding. The cameras flashed before we even entered the ballroom. Gasps echoed through the space as people recognized my face. The dead CEO, alive and powerful. People rushed toward us with questions. I held Lila's hand and smiled calmly. She was starting to understand pieces of the puzzle, though she didn't grasp the full picture yet. The media exploded. The resurrection became the headline of the century, from dead to dominant. My story consumed every news cycle for weeks. Reporters camped outside the diner, trying to interview Marcus. He handled it with grace, refusing to speak without my permission. The stepmother tried selling stories to tabloids until my lawyers shut her down. Vanessa watched from her cell as my empire grew daily. She'd try to destroy me and take everything. Instead, she'd push me towards something greater than I'd had before. The irony must have been unbearable. She wanted my money and power. Now I had 10 times more, and she had nothing but a prison cell and decades of regret. Sometimes I wondered if she understood the magnitude of her mistake. If she just loved me honestly, she would have had everything. But greed destroys everything it touches. A billionaire who controlled holdings across 3 continents pulled me aside at the gala. "I've been following your story," he said. "What you've built, how you've come back, it's impressive." He offered me a controlling stake in a major American conglomerate larger than my original company. The opportunity was staggering. Resources, connections, and power beyond anything I'd previously imagined. I accepted immediately. Apex Industries became small compared to this. Vanessa watched from prison as news coverage showed my expanding empire. Every day brought announcements of new acquisitions, partnerships, and growth. She'd try to destroy me. Instead, she'd accidentally set me on a path towards something far greater. The universe had delivered justice not through revenge, but through natural consequences. She wanted my fortune. Now I had exponentially more, and she had nothing. I wondered sometimes if she lay awake at night in her cell, calculating what she'd lost. If she'd married me honestly, loved me genuinely, she would have had billions and a good life. Instead, her impatience and greed had destroyed her completely. It was almost poetic, beautiful in its perfect justice. She'd made her choice. Now she'd live with the consequences for the rest of her life. I reclaimed everything they'd stolen using law and strategy, not violence. Every asset Vanessa had seized, I took back through legal proceedings and silent acquisitions. I bought her properties at bankruptcy prices. When courts seized them, I reclaimed investments through carefully structured deals. I made sure she knew about every loss, sending documents to her lawyer so she could watch her stolen empire disappear piece by piece. She needed to understand the full consequences of her choices. She needed to see what betrayal cost her. Some nights I questioned if I was being too harsh, too calculated. Then I'd remember the champagne, the poison, drowning in darkness while she laughed. I'd remember waking with no memory, no identity, nothing but pain. She tried to erase me from existence. She deserved to watch me come back stronger. Daniel lost everything too: career, reputation, freedom. The legal profession disbarred him permanently. His family disowned him publicly. He'd gambled everything on betraying me and lost catastrophically. Sometimes the best teacher is consequences, even when the lessons come too late. I felt no pleasure in their suffering, but I felt satisfaction. Justice had been served cold and precise, exactly as it should be. Now I could move forward with building something better. Lila's stepbrother walked into my office for his job interview, confident and smiling. He had no idea I was the CEO behind that desk. When I introduced myself, his face went pale. His confident smile disappeared. I read his resume slowly, making him sweat. Then I tore into pieces right in front of him. "You and your mother made my wife's life miserable for years," I said calmly. "You mocked her, belittled her, made her feel worthless. You don't work here. You don't work anywhere near here." He tried to apologize, words tumbling out desperately. But it was too late. Actions have consequences. His cruelty toward Lila had been consistent and deliberate for years. Now he'd face the consequences. Security escorted him out while he cried. Word spread quickly through business circles. No one would hire him after that public rejection. His mother's schemes had destroyed both their futures completely. I felt no guilt about it. They'd had countless chances to be decent human beings. They'd chosen cruelty instead. Sometimes justice means letting people experience the natural consequences of their choices. They'd made Lila feel small and worthless. Now they'd know what it felt like to have no power and no options. Vanessa and Daniel made their final mistake from jail. Through outside contacts, they arranged an escape during transport and went straight after Lila. They knew she was my weakness, the one person who could make me vulnerable and force my hand. The video arrived on my phone, showing Lila bound and terrified in some abandoned location. The demands were simple: give them everything or she dies. Rage consumed me, hot and violent, but I forced myself to stay calm. Panic would get her killed. I needed to think strategically, move carefully. I tracked her phone while calling the police, feeding them coordinates in real time. The signal led to an abandoned warehouse district at the city's edge. I drove there myself, breaking every speed limit, my heart pounding with fear and fury. They'd crossed the final line by touching her. Now they'd face the full consequences. This wasn't about business anymore or stolen money. This was personal. They'd threatened the woman who'd saved my life, who'd shown me kindness when I had nothing. For that, there would be no mercy, no second chances. I was coming for them, and this time it would end permanently. I found them in a warehouse that smelled of rust and decay. Vanessa pressed a gun to Lila's head, her hands shaking but determined. Daniel stood nearby, looking nervous and scared. I walked in slowly with my hands visible and empty. "Funny," I said quietly. "This is exactly how you lost the first time, underestimating me completely." Vanessa tried to pull the trigger. Her finger tightened on the metal. But I was faster, stronger than I'd been on that yacht. I'd spent months rebuilding my body and mind for exactly this moment. I moved fast, disarming her with techniques I'd learned from security experts. Daniel tried to run but tripped. Within seconds, both were restrained on the ground. Sirens wailed outside. I'd called the police before entering. SWAT teams surrounded the building, blocking every exit. Officers stormed in with weapons drawn. Vanessa and Daniel were arrested again, this time with federal charges added. Kidnapping, assault, attempted murder, escape, the list went on. Lila collapsed into my arms, shaking but alive. I held her while the police secured the scene. It was finally over. They'd get life sentences now with no possibility of parole. Justice served completely. Cameras captured Vanessa's complete breakdown as officers dragged her away. Mascara streaked down her face. She screamed my name over and over, her voice raw and desperate. The world watched her fall in real time, broadcast on every network. Social media exploded with reactions. This time there would be no bail, no clever lawyers. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, phone records, eyewitness testimony from me and Lila. She was getting life without parole. Daniel got 20 years in federal prison. His cooperation earned him a slightly reduced sentence, but not enough to matter. 20 years would destroy whatever remained of his life. Vanessa got life plus additional years for kidnapping. The judge called her crimes exceptionally cruel and premeditated. Justice, cold and precise. I felt no pleasure watching her led away, but deep satisfaction. The right outcome had been achieved through proper legal channels. She'd spend the rest of her life behind bars, thinking about the champagne and the yacht, about how her greed had destroyed everything. Meanwhile, I'd moved forward with Lila, building something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. The past was finally closed. The future could begin. 3 weeks later, I walked into a charity gala with Lila. She wore white, elegant and radiant. I wore black, confident and proud. Hand in hand, we crossed the stage while cameras flashed constantly. The media was in absolute frenzy. They figured everything out by then. The missing CO, the waitress who'd save him, his fortune now tied to hers. I approached the microphone. She found me when I was nothing but a broken man with no memory. She gave me shelter, work, dignity, and love when I had nothing to offer. Now everything I am, everything I have, belongs to her completely. Lila cried, tears streaming down her beautiful face. The crowd gave a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Marcus stood in the audience, beaming with pride. Even the stepmother attended, looking sick and uncomfortable. The world knew now who Lila was. L. Industries was revealed as hers, assets worth billions. She'd become one of the most successful businesswomen in the country overnight. Her kindness had saved me. Now her future was secure forever. She deserved every bit of recognition and success. Her compassion had given me a second chance at life. Now I'd spend the rest of mine making sure she knew her worth. I donated half my fortune to charity in Lila's name over the following months. Education, medical research, housing for the homeless, work that actually mattered and changed lives. Vanessa watched from prison as coverage showed my growing philanthropy and success. She'd poisoned the man who would have given her everything. Instead, she created something far greater than what she tried to destroy. She thought drowning me was the end of Adrian Monroe. But I was just getting started. My resurrection wasn't just about revenge or reclaiming what was stolen. It was about becoming someone better than I'd been before. Someone who understood that real wealth came from love and kindness, not just money and power. Lila had taught me that when she'd shown compassion, without expecting anything in return. Now I spent every day proving I'd learned that lesson. The empire I built was stronger. The relationships I formed were deeper. The life I lived was richer in every way that mattered. Vanessa had tried to kill me. Instead, she'd given me the chance to truly live. And as I stood on our balcony with Lila, watching the sunset paint the sky in gold, I realized something. Her betrayal had been a gift. She destroyed Adrian Monroe, so someone better could rise from the ashes.